meeting around Northeast housing strategies. Welcome. I am Dr. Stephen Holt, and I chair the Oversight Committee. We've still got a few committee members that are in traffic, but I don't want to prolong our getting started any further. One of the things that's important to me is honoring time and starting on time and stopping on time. So it's now 10 after, and we're going to change up the agenda a little bit. As you know, our focus and effort is going to be specifically, our discussion is specifically around the agenda as in front of you. And we welcome participation, questions, feedback, comments from all persons who are present, but specifically on the agenda items as outlined. So if you have concerns and thoughts and ideas and things that you want to share related to the agenda tonight, there's a sign-up sheet in the back. We'd love for you to do that, and there will be some time for public comment at the end of our meeting. If you have concerns, thoughts, and suggestions for things that are not on the agenda tonight, then I will connect you with one of the Portland Housing Bureau staff, or we'll have them identify themselves so that you can talk with them. There are a variety of ways to connect via email, phone, and or in-person setting opportunities for meetings. So we're interested in your feedback, interested in your thoughts. We want to hear from you. But for the purposes of tonight, and so that our meeting is productive, we want to make sure that it stays on the agenda topics of the evening. A couple of house cleaning things if you're not familiar with this property. Restrooms are right under that sign, directly to the back. I mentioned already that there's food and drink, and then I mentioned also that right by the front is the sign-in sheet. So if you have not signed in, we want you to do that. If you want to testify, then we'd also want you to sign up so we can capture that as well. Now, in light of the fact that we've got some people stuck in traffic, we are not going to start with the vote on the change in boundary for the $5 million allocation. We will address that. Most likely, we'll address it later in our meeting. And so, I want to, before we get rolling, introduce to you a new addition to the Oversight Committee from the Mayor's office, Seraphy Allen. If you'd push your button and maybe say a little bit about you.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be a part of this committee and learn mostly about everything that's going on and how our office can particularly be helpful. The mayor frequently cites kind of this policy initiative and is really excited for us to be able to hear from both the community and the board about everyone's wishes, and I look greatly to learning from everyone here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Seraphy. Thank you. As we're doing musical chairs. Welcome. I'm glad you're here as the new representative. We also have, this is her first public meeting, and as she sits down, Sheila Holden, who has been very involved in the city and in the community in a variety of ways. Sheila, if you would just kind of say hello to everybody.
Good evening.
Here, you can go right there.
Hello, my name is Sheila Holden. I'm Regional Business Manager for Pacific Power and have been involved with a number of the Prosperous Portland programs, including the ICRAC, the Interstate Urban Renewal Advisory Council, which I co-chaired, and also with the Northeast Initiative, which I was involved in. And I'm looking forward to being on this committee because one of the things that was a real strong point for the Northeast Economic Development Alliance was home retention and protection of the wealth that was already in the community in home ownership and adding to it where we could. So I'm looking forward to working with you guys on this project. I do want to say to you, I just left my physician's office, and so I'd said I'd be here tonight, and I am, but she suggested that I should go home because she thinks that I have pneumonia. And so I don't want to transfer anything. So I did want to come in and give my yes vote and let you know that I will see you at the next meeting. And I so wanted to hear the presentations tonight. And so I'd ask if I know I can't call in, but that would have been great. So anyway, thank you for the time.
Wow.
And I apologize.
Well, thank you for being here. And now that we have at least a quorum,
Okay.
and then we have the vote by proxy as well. We'll take just a few minutes, shouldn't take us a lot of time. We will address this and then let you go and rest. Thank you so much. Wow, that you come in. So it was suggested or requested that there be a change in boundary for the $5 million allocation to include the entire urban renewal area, as opposed to just within the study area. Historically, all the dollars have been allocated to the study area, and the request came to the Oversight Committee, and so we want to have a vote in regard to that. So, Marlon, sir, what say you?
Yes.
Sheila, what say you?
Yes.
Yes. Virgie?
Yes.
Excellent. Felicia?
Yes.
Jillian?
Yes.
And I understand that Dr. Bethel, who was also attempting to be here, that he sent his vote in by proxy, and it was yes. And then Tristan Dallas, who is also unable to be here, sent his vote in by proxy, and it was yes. And then Dr. Lisa Bates sent her vote in by proxy, and it was yes. And I'm also yes. So 100% yes. So the recommendation here, from here, we'll go to the mayor, for the mayor to know that the Oversight Committee is in 100% support of extending the boundary to include the entire urban renewal area. In light of that, Sheila. Thank you. Wow, please take care. Wow. Yeah, yeah. Get better. And pray for you. All right.
So the question I had, and I can't remember if the person was in the Collaborative or PCRI, but I think that there was one person who was originally on the list who bought outside of the study area. And if they bought within the new expanded area, I think that we should address that they had a missed opportunity based on being more ready to buy a house. So I don't know how to address that, but if they bought within the interstate URA, like I said, I can't remember where they were, if you could just let us know so we can figure it out. No? No? Okay.
It was off. Okay. So if we can get some information, we can begin to address some of that. That would be excellent for us. Thank you. All right. Well, we are back on agenda. We're still running behind, but we'll catch up. So, Central City Concern would come and join us at the table. When you are talking, if you will just push the button, that'd be fantastic. Introduce yourself and share. You have the clicker.
Right there.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is my first time in front of this committee. Thank you. So it is on, yes. Okay. So thank you very much for allowing me to present on our project. My name is Maura Lederer. I'm with Central City Concern. I've been with Central City Concern for a couple of years now, and I'm very proud and happy to be part of the team. We try to provide a lot of wonderful services for the community in general. I'll talk about that a little bit, but really I'm here to talk about our specific project tonight. So okay, so clicker. There we go. Okay. Okay, so our project is an affordable housing project, rental units. It's located at 6905 Northeast Interstate Boulevard. It's between Bryant and Deacom, and it's just within a few blocks of the Rosa Parks Max Station, the yellow line. So when we looked at the site, we searched for some time to try and find a site that we thought would be able to provide a lot of benefit to the residents by being very within the community, close to mass transit, and close by to employment centers, bikeable to everything. So we're very happy that we were able to find the site that's right on the Max line. We've designed the project to have units that go within 30 to 60% MFI. I know that some of this was discussed at the last meeting, so I won't go into extreme detail for it, but I'm just giving a background for anyone who isn't familiar with the project. We are located immediately adjacent to the north of the Albina Head Start facility. And in fact, our site there, I'm sorry, the diagram is so small there on the screen, but our site actually provided some land to build the Head Start facility playground. So we have a common area easement that allowed them to build that playground there. And we worked with Head Start in the beginning. We were really hoping to try to help them expand their facility. I know that they serve 35 families now. They would love to have a little more space to be able to serve additional families. Unfortunately, with our project dynamics, for reasons that are probably more complicated than we want to get into here, but by trying to provide space for them, it bumped us up into a different construction cost category, so it just was deemed to be unfeasible. So that was unfortunate, but we continue to work with them. We're going to provide some additional improvements to the playground area when we get our project built. And we have a pretty good working relationship with Carissa over there. So when we thought about what we should build on this site, we basically went back and looked at the information. I know that there were many, many hours spent and many meetings with the community members to talk about what the community needed and wanted. Affordable housing was a top priority. There were obviously many priorities and many desires out of the program, but affordable housing was definitely one of the top priorities. For our project, we consider ourselves a piece of the puzzle. Obviously, there are multiple projects going on in the community, which PHB has funded in part. So we look at our project as we wish that we could provide an answer for everything that is needed in the community, but we decided for our project what we would do is try to provide the most housing units that we could for the community. So it's a very tight site. I think that Steph last time referenced, we got a density of about 137 units per acre. It's a very, very cost-efficient site. Actually, I should forward this one. And we worked really hard to leverage the benefits obtained from the PHB funds that we received. So PHB funds represent, I think it's about 28% maybe of the funding on the project. So really, our goal with this specific project was to provide the most housing that we could for the community. Okay. The affordability for the project will be maintained for 99 years. That's kind of a new thing. Typically, the maximum time period for affordability is 60 years. PHB with this round asked if people could provide 99 years, and CCC is in the business essentially of providing affordable housing, so we absolutely said that we would be able to do that. So this is affordable housing that will be maintained within the community for a full 99 years and hopefully beyond. So our project rents, I referenced before, they're 30% to 60% AMI, so it's very low to low, no moderate rents. And as far as the tenant population, obviously being within the Northeast preference plan, the tenant population will come from residents who have been displaced within the community, residents who have lived here before, or families. And although CCC, we will do our own outreach to try and find these residents, which we can do through our service provider programs, which I'll get into after this. PHB is actually taking the lead on providing lists to us of possible residents for the community. So that will be the main source of our resident profile. And I know that in the older material generated by the committee, I saw some things about structure of the policy and how PHB will do that. I know they're still they're still working on really generating the specifics of the policy and the point system and how they will, ensure that it's a fair system to get residents into the project. But we will be working, we've already started to have meetings with PHB on this, so we will be working closely with them. So going back to services that CCC provides, we've got a list here, and I won't bore you by reading every single center name and facility name that's on the list. But essentially, we provide medical care, mental health services to a wide variety, a broad base of community members. And so we will be utilizing all of these facilities to spread the word about the availability of these housing. When we have clients come in through our services program, we gather information about their history, where they have lived, all that kind of stuff, which can be very beneficial, and we can use it to kind of screen through to see if there are clients who potentially would be good residents for the facility. And if so, for our project, if so, what we'll do is we will give that information to PHB so that they can just add that name to the list and utilize their point system and whatever magic they're using to determine how the wait list is organized. CCC as an organization has an embedded policy to foster opportunities for all populations within our community. I'll name just a couple of our programs in detail, but if anyone has any questions, we have our website, cccconcern.org. Has a lot of information about our clinics and all of the services that we provide. So we have a couple of newer programs that we've started. One of the newest is a program called Flip the Script, which basically is a program to provide peer support and employment assistance to African Americans that are coming out of the prison system. So we have a number of programs like this, but this one is very specific to provide the peer support. One core mainstay of our approach and philosophy for our supportive services is to provide peer support. We have about 60% of our employees actually are people who have come up through our system. So, they graduate from, volunteer work, and once they kind of get into a program for that, they eventually graduate into a program that allows them to go out and we help them get paid jobs. So we're super proud of the fact that 60% of our employees have come through our system. And it really, I think, helps make a difference with our population so that, everyone can understand where they've been, where they potentially can go, and it's just kind of a great program. We also have a program called the Puente Center, which is more specifically geared towards the Latino community. We provide services in Spanish as well as English. And again, basic notion of pretty much all of our services, we try to provide peer support, a culturally, nurturing environment so people feel comfortable and can grow and foster. Another one of our projects is the Miracles Club, which we just recently completed. I guess it was about a year ago now. It's 47 affordable rental units that we teamed with the Miracles Club, and we help provide supportive services as well as financial services on that one. So, and then one other program that I'll mention is the Imani Center that we've got. It provides a culturally specific and responsive Afrocentric approaches to mental health and addictions treatment, peer support, and case management. So the Imani Center is, its leadership team is all, everyone is from the community, and it's, it's a great program, and it is very specifically geared towards the African American community. Again, we have various programs geared towards various populations. So on the next slide, the main gist of this that we just wanted to share with the group is, and I'm sorry, you probably can't see that there, but when we talk about the housing and health services and the populations that we serve, you can see that, in terms of, we've got a column on the right that basically defines what the Portland Metro population breakdown is, and then the column to the left of that shows what the population, our population served is compared to the Portland metro area. So, next slide I think I'll skip just because I think I've already discussed how we are focused on a peer mentor type of program for all of our programs. I wanted to just briefly discuss the DMW ESB aspect of our project. I'm not sure how much information the group and the group collectively here has, but Portland is obviously going through a lot of change right now. There's a lot of construction going on, and it's very, very difficult to get any kind of subs onto projects, let alone the DMW ESB subcontractors are actually very much in demand right now. We have, though, utilized a group called MCIP, which I was hoping would be able to join us here tonight, but they weren't able to. But they've done a terrific job at helping us and helping our contractor do outreach to the subcontracting community. We have achieved and exceeded the goals that were outlined for us by PHB with respect to the minority-based contracting requirements. And as a whole, CCC has internal policies long before we were, had these requirements. where we did the same thing. We've always had goals of 30% DMW ESB. Again, it's getting more and more difficult to achieve, but hopefully with groups like Tony Jones and his MCIP organization and others out there, we can help educate and help people learn how to get certified, because there, I think, are probably a lot of subcontractors out there that would love to be certified as DMW ESB, but they need some help to understand how to do that. It's a complicated bureaucracy, and so we have been working on that. We did an outreach effort. We started in January. We met with, I've got some very specific information here on that, but 1 second, which is not in the packet. It's a house. So that is that aspect of our construction. Okay, so I think I'll just skip to the status update for everyone on current status of the project. We got our funding basically, I guess, 8 months ago or something, and we got our plans into plan check in January. I'm very happy to say that we look like we will be through plan check this month. We are working on our closing for the financing stage. So bottom line is we expect to be starting construction the 1st of August. And we have an 11-month construction schedule. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the development process, we're happy to say this is has been a very efficient and expedient process, and the city has been really, really wonderful at ensuring that affordable housing projects are, helped through the process and in an efficient way so that we can get our housing completed and occupied by people. So I guess that's it, and I am here for any kind of questions anyone has.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I will begin by asking if the committee has questions for Maura or to the presentation.
Maura, could you remind us what the unit mix is in respect to bedrooms, not just percent of AMI?
Yeah, we have 17 two-bedrooms and 34 one-bedrooms.
No 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom family-size units?
No, in that, we would have loved to be able to do that, but again, this was kind of an exercise in cost efficiency and providing the most affordable housing units, we could for the money. So I know that some of the other NOFA-funded projects do have some family housing, and so we are just not one of the projects that did family housing. If we did, then essentially we would have less units. So it's kind of a trade-off.
Any other questions? So, first question I have, and I'll try to be extremely brief. Before I ask the question, I'll say this. I'm extremely delighted that you're working with Tony Jones of MCIP to address the DMW ESB, which is extremely important to us. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see how that is being kind of demarcated, how many of the minority contractors are being used as it relates to the project. We'd really like to know about that. We're extremely interested, not only in people who've been displaced getting an opportunity, but we'd also like to see the companies that have historically not had the opportunity to be involved being involved. So
Sure.
I'd love to know what that looks like.
Okay, and I do have some basic information on that. It looks like we have 26 different trades that are being provided through DMW ESB contractors. I have a very specific list, but I don't know if you want me to read through it of all the different.
You can just present it to me at some point. That'd be
Yeah,
good. Email.
certainly. Yeah, of course.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And then the other question is, who is going to manage the facility?
CCC will
Okay.
manage the facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions from the committee? All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, let's transition right into data updates from the homeownership partners. We invite PCRI. Good evening. Welcome.
So I'll get you started off here. I'm Travis from Portland Community Reinvestment Initiatives for perhaps just Seraphi, who I have not met before, and those of you who I have presented to before. Good to see you again. Before we dive into our homeownership update, I did just want to thank you for having us back again, and I wanted to share some kind of exciting information about our Beatrice Morrow apartments that is new since the last Oversight Committee meeting, because a lot's happened. So first off, kind of getting into the dirt.
I'm sorry to
first.
interrupt, they can't hear you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so to get into some of the dirt about our Beatrice Morrow apartment development that is new since the last meeting that we had here. You all may have seen as you drove down MLK that we're in construction now, which I'm very excited to report. I know there's been a lot of questions and concern about the environmental safety of that site because it's got a long history. And I wanted to report that we've continued to do environmental inspections as we have gone through construction and before we got into actually pouring any concrete or doing anything. We knew that there was some lead-impacted soil remaining on the site there, and I'm happy to report that there was less of that than we had planned for. And any of the lead-impacted soil has been identified, very closely monitored, and removed from the site. Some other areas of concern that we've had or that may have come up as we got started in construction, we've continued to test those with our third-party environmental consulting company, and I'm happy to report that those have been free of hazards. So despite a little bit of a checkered past on that site, things are looking very good for it to continue to be healthy and safe for folks. And then, on a much more positive note, as I mentioned, construction's underway. We've got all our footings poured and all of our kind of below ground work done, and we're now forming up the walls for the first floor. So excited to see things go vertical. So. Definitely. So then diving into our homeownership development, just to give you a little bit of background and talk a little bit about what has been going on and what is going on. We, Andrea and her team, have been working closely with clients referred through the preference policy, and my team and I have been working on the development of the new homes for purchase. Before we dig too far into that, I wanted to just kind of cover a little bit of details and talk to you all on the Oversight Committee and urge you, as we continue to move forward with preference policy and future rounds, to take a little bit closer look at the policy, how and whether it's working, and not just looking at timelines for the application, how marketing materials are prepared, or what information is communicated, but thinking a little bit more deeply about goals. I know on the first round of the preference policy, no specific goals were set because we didn't know who was going to apply for the policy or who was going to apply in the application rounds for the preference policy. But now we've been through a round. And thinking about what are our goals now. who apply. We know who lives and lived in Portland, and we can look at data to figure out who owns property and who doesn't. I think we need to look at this and not just feel like we did something good, created good progress, and made good data, but really look at addressing generational poverty, lack of wealth, and creating some really specific and hard goals about reducing minority homeownership gaps. We need to think about who we want to serve. Are those families and households actually applying for the preference policy? How do we reach them if they aren't applying? And what do these families actually need to become homeowners? We're working with, and Andrea can dig into this much more deeply than my personal experience, but we're working with a community that's skeptical of government. This preference policy was created because of families who frankly got screwed over by public investment and policy in the past. And these households have some significant barriers and reasons why they're not really interested in interacting with government. And so if we're really trying to achieve the goals that have been stated for this preference policy, we may need to think a little bit deeper and a little bit differently about how we actually achieve those goals. On a very separate note, we know that home prices are going up, and we also know not just home prices, but construction costs. And so when I mentioned, who are we trying to help here, we need to think about, how we know that more subsidy means helping fewer families, and less subsidy might mean helping more families, but are those the families that we're actually intending to reach? And I know that that's not an easy question, but as we're setting goals and thinking about the work that we're trying to do here, I think those are important trade-offs to consider. We also, we know, PCRI knows the needs of the families who are already in our homeownership pipeline. One of the challenges that we've found with the preference policy is that folks who have come through this application are generally lower income, and we know that they're just starting, in many cases, the preparation for homeownership as to folks who are already in our pipeline. And so there's a concern about, how much subsidy is needed to get how many people into homes, and how soon can we do that?
So Travis, let me say this. In regard to that, I'm very interested in that conversation and the thoughts around that conversation. But in light of our time, I really want to make sure we hit the updates that we're trying to get to tonight. And so we got another group that's presenting behind you. So if you'll hold off on the rest of that and give me the updates, I'd appreciate that.
Yep, sounds good.
Again,
So one of the
conversation we're interested in.
Yep.
Okay?
So one of the things we're going to talk about is the sites for development. I will make one last note that PCRI made a request to the Housing Bureau to potentially swap some interstate corridor urban renewal area TIF funds for CDBG DPAL in order to develop sites that PCRI owns elsewhere that are already vacant and ready for development, that are still within the study area. PHB determined and denied that request because, in quotes, it would undermine the intent of the committee and your intent to award TIF funding to PCRI. So I just want to, I don't know if that was communicated to you, but I think that's important to share. So then as I dive into the actual statistics here, I just want to reset and recommunicate expectations about what we're developing and who we're serving related to readiness to purchase and the timeline for development and purchase, and to make sure that you all understand that we know that there's a timeline to deliver these homes by the end of 2018, and we have from the onset been working toward that. But at no point did we really anticipate that folks were going to be into homes yet. So I just want to make sure that you understand that we're still talking about future tense in terms of homes being ready and folks being ready to move into those homes.
So with that, my name is Andrea Debnam, and I manage the Resident Services Department for PCRI, which includes our homeownership, pre-purchase counseling and education program. So to kind of get everybody up to speed, I will say that this information on this particular slide was updated after you received it. There were a few corrections that need to be made, so I'm going to be reading from my notes, not too far off, but just wanted to make that clear that the information is a little bit different. So since we started this process with PHB and working with applicants coming through the preference policy. To date, we have 18 households that have been enrolled and are currently working in our program. Of those 18 households, 100% of those households are African American, which is 12 female and 6 male heads of households. The households range anywhere from 37% MFI to 100%. Many of them are between the 60 and 80% range. In terms of readiness to buy, about 17% of the individuals will probably be ready within the next 6 months. Probably about 38%, which is about 3 people. 38% anywhere from 6 to 12 months, which is about 7 households. Another 5 households, which is the 28%, anywhere from a year to 18 months. And an additional probably 3 households that will need at least 18 months or more of preparation. And these are, again, could move and change by the next time we meet. If those that are not familiar just about the home buying process, and things come up, things happen, some successes, some setbacks, you name it, anything is possible when you're working with households to move through this process. But happy to, have more conversations about where we are moving forward, but just wanting to be clear that this can change. There's a lot that goes into this process, but you all requested information about that, and there you have it.
So then the homes that we're looking to develop are on 6 PCRI sites within North and Northeast Portland. And as just a point of clarification, PCRI is prepared to develop all the homes that we'd identified within the interstate corridor urban renewal area, despite a little bit of disappointment about not being able to have a little flexibility there. Looking at 3 to 6 homes per site in a variety of neighborhoods. Still have some opportunity to flex and change if we figure out that there's another site that has a higher opportunity or is more prepared for development. In terms of the actual timeline, plans should be submitted for permit within the next week. We anticipate permit approval and construction start later this year, and the first homes complete in June 2018. This is all based on feedback from the architect, contractors, and experience on prior developments that we've got. Homes will be ready on sort of a staggering, rolling basis. We're trying to coordinate that both with the construction timelines and to the degree that it's feasible, coordinate that with buyer readiness as well. Also just wanted to note in terms of that development timeline and contractors, we've engaged with the National Association of Minority Contractors of Oregon and Nate McCoy, as well as MCIP, to identify African American contractors that are from the community that can build these homes. PCRI has intended to develop these with private financing and for all of the subsidy to come in on the buyer side rather than the construction side. This really allows us a lot more flexibility to work with contractors who may or may not be prepared or ready to engage on publicly funded projects and all of the hoops and requirements that come with that. And it's really an exciting opportunity for us to be able to build capacity and provide opportunity for contractors who don't normally get to work on this kind of project. So we've been working with those contractors, meeting with them regularly, sharing information about the projects and figuring out the best ways that we can work with them to make this a reality. We've also had some ongoing meetings with neighborhood associations about the developments, and I'm happy to say that they've been pretty excited about new home ownership opportunities in the neighborhood. So, and then just sharing a little bit of information. This is hard to see on the screen, I suppose, but this is just the first site that we're looking to develop, which is 5 homes that range from about a little over 1,000 square feet for a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, to about 1,500 square feet for a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. So you can see the row homes there based on feedback that we've gotten from meeting with potential homeowners. You can see some basic floor plans with all of the living areas on the ground floor. Bedrooms, on the 2-bedroom layout, the 2 bedrooms are on the 2nd floor with a shared bathroom and a laundry area. And on the 3-bedroom, there's a master on the 2nd floor with an additional 2 bedrooms on the 3rd floor. And that's what we've got for you today.
Excellent, thank you very much. Questions from the committee?
Hey, quick question. Do you guys have any home buyers ready to go into those units when they're done?
Certainly, based on the timeline that I just shared, and those will be our first 5, we'll certainly have individuals ready even prior to that. But many of, if anything, a lot of the folks that will be ready sooner, it's really based on their IDA, savings accounts or whatnot. But in terms of mortgage readiness, we will definitely be able to fill those first immediately. Yeah.
So, permits are about to be pulled, or going for permits. On what addresses? Where? What locations? Or are you just kind of a broad?
So the first location is on Williams Street in the Humboldt neighborhood.
Williams Street in the Humboldt?
Yeah, Williams near Alberta.
Okay, you're right. And have the other sites been identified?
We have definitely identified one additional site, and we are contemplating what the best options are for the following sites.
Okay, so Williams and?
Williams in Alberta.
Okay, that's the one. And then, I'm sorry, did you tell me another one?
The other one's just off of Interstate near Going.
Okay.
Travis, Andrea, what can the committee or PHB or others do to help you with this process?
Wow,
How much time you got?
I know, really. That's a good question, and I think, gosh, I mean, it would be great, and I would love to have a conversation, as Travis brought up, about other opportunities within our portfolio that we thought would really be great opportunities for the individuals that we're serving here to have another conversation. If you all were not aware of that, it would be great to have that conversation a little bit in more detail. I would also say, just in terms of timing, I think that, one of the challenges with this initiative is we're kind of locked into this end of 2018, timeline. And I think when thinking about what really needs to be done in terms of rectifying really what we're talking about, wrongs that have been done to these individuals that have been displaced, that you really can't put that in a box. And so I think there's a challenge in terms of, I understand there's a time frame in which resources need to be expended, but I believe that if there is an opportunity to really talk about that, to make sure that we are serving the intended individuals and households, that we are not missing an opportunity because we're locked in to a particular time frame. So I'm sure there's other things that I'd be happy, but those are just 2 things that come to mind in the moment. I don't know if you have anything else.
I think the other thing that I'd add to that is just thinking through as the preference policy overlays the entire interstate corridor urban renewal area and all of the available home ownership dollars is what's been communicated to us will run through the preference policy. I think that presents a particular challenge for us, PCRI, who's been serving North and Northeast Portland for the last 25 years and who works maybe not almost exclusively, but overwhelmingly with African American families with roots in North and Northeast Portland. It requires clients that we've been working with for a long time to go through yet another process and yet more trauma and trouble in order to try to achieve this dream and this opportunity, even though they've been working at it for a long time with us directly. And so it puts up additional roadblocks and barriers, and thinking through if there are ways that, that we can achieve the same goals with fewer barriers.
Appreciate that. Let me say two things. Thank you very much. Any other comments from the, okay, I'll hold
I
mine.
have a question on the first diagram. So I would assume that Williams then is in the front where it says front porch. That would be Williams.
Williams would actually be on the left side of the screen, so the homes
Okay.
Do not face Williams.
do not face Williams. Yeah, the front unit will face, the front door will face Williams, but then the additional homes will face a common walkway.
Got it. So that's not a street, that would just be a walkway between
Correct.
properties? Okay. And does that mean that there's no parking being built with these units?
Not at this site, no.
Have you done a parking study to see how much parking is available? Because these are, you said these are 2 and 3 bedroom units, right? So I would assume then that there's going to be families living there that are going to have 1 and possibly 2 cars, and I just am concerned that without building parking that it's going to be quite a distance.
Potentially street parking in this particular area of Williams has been pretty readily available every time that we've been there. That's not to promise that that will always and forever be the case, but you know, in order to develop things affordably, there are some trade-offs, and this happens to be one of the you know, easier trade-offs and able to make family-sized units affordably in very accessible inner Portland locations.
Go ahead, Sister Virgin.
I'd like to follow up on the parking issue. I think it is an issue even now, today, living in this particular area of the city, apartments going up, houses, and I don't know what it would cost for you to take that into consideration when you're making your plans for building homes, but I think it should be a part of it to be included. I'm not sure how beneficial it would be to have a house and not be able to park near your property or on your property.
It's a trade-off to the tune of about $30,000 to $50,000 a unit. I absolutely hear you, and I absolutely know that that is, you know, it is a compromise. But it is one of the compromises that is essential for us to be able to make in order to deliver these homes at prices that people can actually afford.
When you mentioned that you talked to potential home buyers, how do they feel about this? Do they know this?
Well, one of the things we actually had many of our participants do a survey and really identify what were the most important things to them. Yes. And while parking is important in terms of the things that were the most important, it really was one thing that people were willing to not weigh so heavily on. If it meant not having an additional bedroom in their home or bathroom or those types of things. So while I think it is important, and our, participants have mentioned that in terms of really evaluating what they thought was the most important, it wasn't the most important. If it meant sacrificing having a unit that would be, would suit their family's needs.
And I guess I'd also add that PCRI is developing other properties in other locations that will have parking. So for the people for whom, that's a deal breaker, we'll have other properties that may better suit their needs.
Appreciate that. One of the challenges of living in an identified area is parking. And as we become more and more urbanized, that's just going to be the reality of Portland. That isn't unique to any particular developer. It's just the reality of what we're dealing with as we deal with more density. Two things that I did want to say. One is just in relationship to the preference policy itself. For everyone who does not know or is not aware of what the preference policy does, is the preference policy provides an opportunity for people who've been displaced to return or to have the first access of opportunity to benefit from dollars that are associated with affordable rental and or home ownership. The importance of the preference policy is there are other cities that have attempted to do the same thing and have been overturned by the federal government. And so what the Portland preference policy has been able to establish is because it's geographically based and not driven by any other associative factor, it's been able to be supported. Now, part of our challenge, and this is where we're very concerned about, and some of the things you identified, is the process of the preference policy. Not the policy itself, but the process. Because our goal is, and our concern is, that as many people benefit as rapidly as possible. As you identified, costs are increasing. And so the longer it takes, the more it costs everyone, and the less people benefit. So I'm super excited to hear that permits are being pulled and that we're going to get some nails and some boards and some dirt dug up and some places built. So I want to make sure that we're distinguishing between the policy and the process. So when we talk about the process, there's certain things we definitely are concerned about improving for the process. The policy, though, is something that has been upheld and supported. So we'll make sure we have that distinguishment. So thank you guys very much for presenting tonight. Appreciate it. Collaborative. And I realize that our time is running away, so we're at 7 minutes after 7.
Maybe we can cut public comment. I don't know.
We'll be
Can I cut?
We'll be all right.
She's got some stuff we want you guys to respond to.
Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. How are you? Hello, everyone. Looks like you need to stand up and take one of those exercise breaks. You're looking a little dead there. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Cheryl Roberts, and I am the Executive Director for the African American Alliance for Homeownership. We've put together a collaborative that was awarded funds through the Northeast Housing project. So we have Diane Lynn here, who is Executive Director of Proud Ground, and Steve, who is Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity. So together, we're going to provide you an update on our process. So you have your handout there. So what I'd like to do is also have you look at your last, let me see, it's in here somewhere. Sorry. Well, you have a sheet there that has the total number of individuals that we're working with. So it kind of gives you a detailed description of what's going on for instance, potential homebuyer 1 through 29. So as of today, we are working with 29 prospective buyers, and that's from the 4 rounds that we've participated in thus far. Out of that 29, we have 26 of those folks are African American, 2 are white, and 1 is Latino. And I'm not sure if it's Latino or Latina. I also want to thank you too for your vote to expand the boundaries within the interstate urban renewal area. We think that this will provide additional opportunities for folks to find affordable housing. So thank you. And so what I'd like to do too, if you look at the update, we have 3 different models for those of you who don't know. So we have down payment, the DPAL model, we have permanent affordability, and then we have self-help homeownership. So those are 3 housing models that we, as a collaborative, are offering to the participants of the preference policy. 9 of the participants are working in the DPAL model. 8 are participants, Proud Ground, 10 are Habitat, and of course, we have 2 participants that purchase, and both of those were African Americans, so we're really excited about that. So these are just aggregate totals, but again, you have a full sheet that lists what the folks, what their ethnicity, their household income, their MFI, and their readiness. And we think that was important, and you asked for that information. So as we move along, so I wanted to also just remind you of the lender criteria, which is on page 3 of your handout. And there's not, we can't do anything about what the lender is requiring, because becoming mortgage ready is also falling under these criteria. So we just kind of wanted to give you that as a segue into looking at each housing profile. So again, 9 families are working in the DPAL. The DPAL is a down payment assistance loan. Those folks that are eligible for that or have selected that program and are eligible, their task is to go out and find a home on their own within the state boundaries. So again, in 9 people, you can see where the numbers broken down as far as females and African American. Income range is 42 to 86. And the challenges that folks that we're working with under that model have judgment, debt loads, collection, and again, those debts are ranging from $120 to $47.23. Credit score, you can see the lowest one is 518. So again, those folks, there could be an array of things that are wrong or that are challenges for people and barriers. And we lost our slides. Okay, there we are. Okay, so then again, months to be ready. So on page 5, again, Proud Ground model, another option, housing option for our folks that come through. You can see 5 female, 3 males, the income ranges, and again, the challenges that they're looking at, and then credit score, and then the months before readiness. Am I going too fast? Okay. I'm tired. We're trying to go home. No. Now, page 6 is, this is great, I really appreciate this. The Habitat model, once again, breakdown of female ethnicity, income, and challenges. And as you can see, the thing I think most folks have in common are some of the challenges, which is judgment, debt load, and collections, which is why they come to us. And again, credit score, and even though we may have someone that has a 730 credit score, their debt may be really high. I mean, there's something going on there. And if you look at the spreadsheet that we did provide, you can see where those challenges are for that person with that credit scoring. And then months for readiness. Again, just kind of aggregate of what the challenges are. Lack of income, you can see the lowest is 12,240. As our colleagues mentioned, PCRI, that is a problem. And we are getting folks that have really, really low incomes. However, what we want to say too is that we are committed to working with everyone that comes in. We found some glitches there in our process, but we are aware that what those glitches are. So we're working hard to develop some internal structure so we don't lose anyone, that everyone, either you become a homeowner or you become a better renter. It's one of the two, but financially, those folks that come to us will leave us with some type of sound financial plan or even success. So we're committed to that. Again, negative credit history. lack of earnest money. So those are just some of the challenges. And then we also noted some of the housing prices, and the average right now is $462,000. And, you know, it's just a lot of money. And those of you who are homeowners, I know, understand, you know, how challenging this process is. So that's all I'm going to say. And I'm going to give it to, yeah, you want to say something? Sure.
Good evening, everyone. We'll keep cooking through this. As you can see, thanks to the team of people that are working with all these clients, we've sold the very first house, which we pre-purchased back last year and saved about, I think, $30,000 to $40,000 of increased cost, probably more, on the market. We have a very happy homeowner family that we hope you all can meet sometime soon. We have the next family in the queue is, we've collectively decided that we're going to attempt a lease-to-own model with this family. We think they're going to be ready in 6 months to 8 months. Katie Ulrich is here with me tonight. She's a resident expert in the field. If you have questions about that, we'd be happy to talk to you. We provided some slides that discuss the lease-to-own structure. So if you have any questions, please let us know about that. This is going to be done on just a case-by-case basis to make sure we're choosing the right client to get into the kind of path in that way. So that will be the second of these 4 houses that we, and the 2 other houses we co-own with the City of Portland, and we'll see who is next in line to be ready for these houses. Again, we've got a gap between having these units of homes ready between when people are literally ready to purchase, based on all the information that Cheryl just discussed. I'm going to hand it now to Steve and let him talk about new development.
Can do both of these things. Thank you.
Do you want me to handle this slide?
Sure. So for the past year, we've been working hard to find property that we can develop for new home construction in the interstate urban renewal area that overlaps with the northeast area, and that has been a challenge. We were really seeking properties that we can build townhome style units, and I'd say the lowest cost per unit of property we could find was about $130,000 per unit, which was out of reach for the families that we're trying to serve. What we're here to present today is a property that we have under contract that we are proposing that we move forward with developing. That's, I'd say, a mix between our ideal townhomes that we were hoping to build and a higher density project. This is a site that we would build 30 homes on. You can go to the next slide. It's located on the corner of Interstate and Kilpatrick, so north some, right in the Kenton neighborhood, a few blocks from sort of that downtown Kenton area. It's also, next slide, just down the road from Kenton Park, a few blocks, only 3 blocks from the closest Max line, so right in the heart of the neighborhood there. The detail on the project, this would be, I mentioned sort of that mix. So there's, it would all be 2 and 3 bedroom units. The smallest units would be about 850 square feet. The largest would be about 1,250 square feet. The first floor units would be flats. So if you can picture like a 2-bedroom unit that's all on one floor, that's accessible on the first floor, and then above it would be a townhome. So you'd go up the stairs and you'd have a living space, and then above that would be your 3 bedrooms on the 3rd floor. So there would be living space up and down. This would include 2 buildings. One building would be 18 units. The other building would be 12 units. And it also include about a 2,000 square foot playground area that is shared by the whole community, which would be in the condominium ownership model. So this is just an elevation of that. The 2 buildings would be otherwise fairly similar. The challenges with the site, as was brought up by PCRI, this site would not accommodate any parking. There is roads on 3 sides, so Interstate has, I think, 8 or 10 spots. Kilpatrick probably has 7 or 8 spots, and then Watts on the other side. So there's street parking along it, but it's not possible for us to incorporate on-site parking. The good news is that these would be very affordable units. So as you saw in our numbers, we have a large number of the families we're serving at very low incomes in the $25,000 to $35,000 a year range. And this would accommodate those very low income families with prices at around $130,000. We can serve that sort of next income group up with prices around $180,000, and then the sort of highest income 70 to 80% families that we would want to serve would be at $230,000. And those are incomes specifically designed so that they're affordable for those families. Yeah, that's the last slide. Is there anything else? In terms of a timeline, it would be very difficult for us to have this completed by the December of 2018 deadline. So I'll put that out there. The soonest we expect we could have this out of the ground would be spring of next year, and it would be at least a 12-month process, partly because the way we would build this is that Habitat would be the developer. These wouldn't all be Habitat homes, but Habitat would be the developer, and part of the subsidy we bring is a majority of the labor being volunteer labor. So we would be leading the project as a nonprofit developer as part of the cost savings.
Is that it for us? Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I didn't mention this. I will begin and then defer to the committee. I forgot to mention this when PCRI presented, but in terms of the December 2018 deadline, we didn't determine that. That was not determined by us. That is just associated with the allocation of funding. And I think one of the things that's very important is for us to be able to demonstrate progress, for us to demonstrate action, which is why we've been pushing for progress and pushing for action so that we can then have a legitimized argument that says things are happening and here is what we can anticipate in terms of an end date around this timeline. If nothing's happening, then we don't really have that argument. Right. We're not in a position to have that articulation. So again, that date, I understand the challenge with it, but not driven by us. We certainly need to have some good things happening within the time frame we've had. So hence streamlining some of the processes and improving things so we can make sure all parties are on the same page. So questions from the committee before I go with those.
Related, Steve, to the 30-unit project, will that whole entire project have the preference policy overlay since it will not meet the December 2018 deadline? Just out of curiosity, what will go outside of the preference policy list?
Yeah, our proposal would be that we build the project in 2 phases, with the first phase being preference policy with the current funding that we have allocated, and the second phase be preference policy of additional next phase preference policy. But we don't have that ability to determine that. Right now, we've got the ability to spend the money we have, so we would be proposing that we have these all be within our program and our preference policy and request an extended deadline.
So I had a quick question. You mentioned that part of the reason the timeline is extended is because of the volunteer labor. Is that, so if that weren't a factor, do you feel like it could be built by the end of 2018? I'm just trying to determine how much extended time is because of the Habitat model, which is great, and how much is just due to the construction timing.
Yeah, I think most of it is due to we don't own the property yet, so we're working on getting a commitment of funds. Then we'd purchase the property, we'd have to go through land use and permitting, and that would be aggressive to just have that start by next spring. We could carve a few months off, I think, if we were to subcontract out more of the project, but most of the timing is that we're just at that land acquisition phase, and it takes time. Yeah.
I have a question for Diane. Diane, of the 3 units that you have left that you showed on the housing that's available under the permanent affordability model, do you have any buyers for the other 3? By the way, thank you for land banking these, but I was just wondering if you had any prospective buyers for those as well.
Actually, the first family that purchased the homes are not permanent. The first home is not permanently affordable. It's a DPAL buyer, which is we just wanted to get units out there and get families matched to them as quickly as possible. The lease to own, we think, will be permanently affordable, and we'll see what happens with the last two. We're going to serve the clients that come up first and serve them as quickly as we can and match them to the unit they want. I would add that we have talked to clients about the kinds of units they are interested in. You all know this, and we would like to be able to provide more single-family homes. These are here now, and as we talk more next week about how to make the preference policy work well, it's going to be a matter of more condo or townhouse type style housing after these 4 houses are sold, unless we can find a few more on the market in the nick of time and scoop them up for our clients.
And the very last thing I have to say is that, during before the recession, between 2002 up to the recession, we had about 1,200, anywhere from 12 to 1,800 condo units being built. And since post-recession, we've only had 600 condo units really built in this region. This isn't the most friendly pace for condos, as we all know, working in affordable housing. What are you guys going to do to mitigate that with this particular unit development? Because, and what I mean, for example, is usually when a condo unit closes, right, is that the attorneys come out immediately after it closes to the prospective owners and say, hey,
right,
you have these things coming up. I just want to make sure, especially since Habitat, who I absolutely love, is about to take on this big risk, I just want to know how you're going to mitigate that as well.
Yeah, I guess I can speak to that. So for the past 15 years, we've almost exclusively building condominium communities. We have about 25 communities that we've built. And I'd say we mitigate that risk by working very closely with the families, helping them establish a successful condominium association that has adequate reserves for the upkeep on their homes. A lot of those condo lawsuits have to do with not really builder defect, but actually maintenance, and it just becomes blurry as to whose fault it is. So we work very closely to make sure that it's a very successful. Obviously, we also worked very hard to make sure that they're built well as well. But we haven't had any issues with the units we built. We have insurance as well that obviously protects us as an organization. But yeah, we haven't had any problems.
Let me add one more thing about that, Felicia. The condo development has been suppressed over the years because of the defect law that you're referencing. We've done a deep dive into it because we're prepping for a project you hopefully will hear about soon, the 5020 interstate project, where we found that there's a new wraparound insurance policy that's bringing more builders and more architects to the table again. So I think we're going to break some new ground on condo development going forward because we desperately need it to serve our clients.
One last final question, which I asked PCRI as well, is what could the committee do to support you in the work that you do regarding the interstate urban renewal area? Because the committee wants to be successful, and we want you guys to be successful as well.
Well, we've been actively involved in the task force, the 3 of us, along with our colleagues, to have these conversations, and you've made a couple good steps tonight. Expanding the boundary, we need to talk about the level of subsidy. We have a list of several other things that could really help open up some other opportunities and remove some of these barriers, and we appreciate the question. We just want to continue to work with you on either big policy questions or nuances that will open up opportunity to match families with units just as quickly as we can all make that happen.
Excellent. I am very excited to hear about the lease to own on a case by case. That's a great approach. How are the rents being used in the lease to own model?
We have established a way to, and the first client is paying actually a lot more. She had to move to the numbers, and we want to bring her back to Northeast. It's a below market price for rent because we can make that happen, but it's slightly higher than what her mortgage is going to be because we want her to be prepared to be a homeowner and have that benefit. We want everything to be around her planning to be able to purchase that home. So it's below market rent, but it's still above what her mortgage is going to be for that. And our slides address some of that.
And then where are those dollars going? So the dollars that are coming in, or is it offsetting expense or?
Yeah, we have a whole financial model that we're happy to share with you that shows exactly where all those dollars will go, and some of it will be set aside for some closing costs for that family.
Okay. I'd love to see that. Thank you very much.
We'll get it to you.
Any other questions from the committee?
If you had to guess, you have quite the list and on that last page and a lot of challenges. I see a lot of the potential homeowners are in that 12 to 18 month range. Reasonably, what percentage do you think are going to make it by the end of December 2018? I mean, I know it's kind of trying to throw a dart at a dartboard.
Yeah,
but
it is. But as I mentioned earlier, that everyone will be served some kind of way. They'll either become financially sound, become better renters, have some type of plan maybe for future home. All of those people are not going to be successful in homeownership. I can guarantee that one. But I cannot to tell you how many will be successful. You know, it's really up to them because they're assigned to a counselor, so they're going to meet monthly, maybe every 6 weeks, depending on their need and their wants and their desires. But it's really going to be up to that person to make sure that their action plan, that they do everything that needs to be done to get them mortgage ready. So it's really up to them, and we can't, I mean, you know, they may have the income to do it, but they may not have the desire to do it. So far, what I see, and if you want me to guess, I will say, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say 60% going to make it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me remind us of two things as Andrea Mathiasen comes and joins us. Remind us of two things. One is, I'm very much aware of our time, and I appreciate those of you who stayed for our conversation. We did start at 10 minutes into our normal moment, so we're a little behind. However, just asked if we had anybody sign up for public comment, and we do not have anyone sign up. Okay, I didn't have that. So if we have some public comment, then excellent. Well, right now we're going to our last presenter, and Andrea Mathiasen, who's going to talk about home ownership program updates and some options associated with it. So hang out with us, and we want to engage around the topics tonight. So thank you.
Good evening. Andrea Mathiasen, Portland Housing Bureau, who's going to talk very quickly about some homeownership updates. So in the packet of information that you received is a letter from the AW Collaborative. The letter requests an increase in subsidy in the urban renewal area from $80,000 to $100,000 per homeownership unit. And so just want to make sure that folks have had an opportunity to review that request and kind of the supportive rationale. I think, you know, it's been mentioned previously this evening that the average homeownership unit available in the market is $470,000 in the URA in North and Northeast neighborhoods. And the Housing Bureau supports that request. We recognize that for home buyers to go out into the market and identify homes and be successful in that acquisition, they need more than the $80,000 that they have been able to access for the past 2 years through the Housing Bureau. So that is a buyer-initiated down payment assistance subsidy that we're supporting that for. We would also support an increase in per unit subsidy from $80,000 to $100,000 per unit on a as-needed basis for development projects as financial evaluation and analysis demonstrates actual need. So I just wanted to put that out for the committee to ask questions about, to respond to, and I obviously, as part of this dialogue, want to kind of invite questions and acknowledge that that would result most likely in a decrease in the number of households that would be served with these resources as we're increasing the subsidy per household. And I think also as part of this conversation, you've got in front of you now and also up on the screen kind of a 5-year forecast for the resources that are allocated to providers and to projects, the number of units we anticipate resulting from those allocations, and you can kind of get a sense for the dollars and the units at play in this conversation over the next 5 years. And these interstate TIF resources, they're just different pots of TIF: base interstate funding, Northeast, TIF lift, and then Prosper Portland has resources for homeownership as well in the URA.
Andrea, I think there's a typo in it. Under the base, it doesn't say 500,000, it says more than that, and then it says 500,000 on the total. And I want to know if it's 4 million for 2021 on both sides. I'm trying to keep track of all the zeros. But do you see the top and the bottom? So if you look at the base, there's an extra zero in 1920.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
There is an extra zero.
Okay, and are the zero, is it right?
It's $500,000.
Okay, and is it only 400,000 or 4 million for 2021?
It is 4 million.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Questions from the committee, or do you need to take a moment and look it over?
So effectively, if we increase the subsidy to 100,000 for all of the home buyers, then we're moving from helping 65 people to helping 50, correct?
That's correct.
And we would be increasing it across the board, or, for everybody, or you said there would be on a case-by-case basis? Sorry, I was taking notes and
So
missed a bit.
for a home buyer who's going out shopping and making offers on homes across the board, we would increase those subsidies to 100,000 per unit. On a development project where the Bureau is putting those resources in through a development loan, doing that financial analysis, we would do that on a case-by-case basis based on the financial evaluation and analysis that happens as part of the underwriting process at the Bureau. There has to be a need for that subsidy level demonstrated. And so, as you point out, to maintain those service levels, those commitments that we made to the community, those 65 households, it would require an additional $1.5 million be allocated to this north and
Any other committee members?
I guess I'm curious, does this increase the speed with which people are going to be able to buy homes? Is there an estimate of, is that $1,000 a specific ask? Why 100,000? Why not 110? Why not 95? Is that a specific gap that we're seeing in purchasing power, or is it just we need more and 100,000 seems like the next logical level?
I think it's probably the latter, most likely. I think this increase paired with the expanded geographic boundaries that were supported this evening, I think it's an optimistic hope that those two things combined will help households be more successful in securing homeownership opportunities. But I think it's also reflective of some preliminary analysis that the ALL Collaborative has done on that 30-unit project on Kilpatrick. So $80,000 of subsidy for that project per unit is inadequate. So they have that sense for that development project also that would be the gap.
Okay. I would love to see some analysis of people currently going through the preference policy process and why that specific number would increase the likelihood that, 5 more people will be able to buy homes this year because they had that extra $20,000, or, why that number? I just want to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that would be my concern if we're going to entertain voting to support, is how do we know that this amount will do it? And not have another conversation, well, we thought it was 100,000, it's actually going to be 105 or 110, or, how do we know that this number is going to help us accomplish that. I understand that whenever you increase the subsidy, we're going to be decreasing the number of people who can be served based on the amount of dollars that are allocated. We get that. But wanting to make sure that what we do is efficient, or what we support. So that's something I'd like to know.
And on the development side of that equation, which is a slightly different dynamic, is there the same level of questioning? Is there broader support for increasing that subsidy if the financial underwriting analysis demonstrates that need?
Again, I would want to see the analysis and why 80,000, why 100,000, why not, can you make it work with 90? I would want to see some specific metrics about, on that case-by-case basis, what are the criteria for increasing the subsidy on the developer side?
For me, before I make a decision like that, I can't make it in a vacuum. I need the analysis behind it on why. I agree with Jillian and Bishop Holt on that, because I think it's really important. As a committee, we've made a commitment to the community to do our due diligence. And due diligence to me implies also the financial due diligence. And so before I can vote on any kind of increase, I would need to see the reason why from a financial picture. So that when somebody in the community asks us, well, where did you come up with the 100,000? I can't just say I got a letter. I need to know, here's some market analysis, here is the reason why. And I think it's really important, because it might not seem from us, from going from 65 to 50 is not a big deal, but it is. And as someone that's working on the Affordable Housing Bond Committee as well, we have a commitment to voters on that. And so any kind of change in numbers, I want to be as transparent to our community that we serve. So they're not thinking we've done any bait and switch, that they know that we actually did our financial due diligence around change. It's very different to do a geographic expansion. But when it comes to a financial change to a dollar amount, when we told the community a very specific amount with a very specific outcome, I think that we have an obligation.
And I would merely add, time is of the essence, obviously. Because as we've repeatedly said, that every day, expense and so forth changes. And so the sooner the better.
Yeah.
I think we're all interested, in fact, I will speak for the committee in this regard, that our desire is to help as many families be successful as possible. We just need to have the best information to do that.
We'll bring that back to you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also wanted to just take a quick opportunity to invite comment with this matrix in front of you on the type of units that the Bureau anticipates funding. We did anticipate 2.5 years ago when we wrote the Northeast Neighborhood Housing Strategy Plan for homeownership outcomes that there would be 65 single-family homeownership units coming out of this. And so just, want to be as transparent with the Oversight Committee and the community that is likely, well, certainly not the outcome that we will probably be looking at when this is all said and done. And as I think the Oversight Committee also responds to the proposal for the Kilpatrick project, again, just wanting to be really transparent about the number of multifamily units that will be created with these resources.
I think in our changing times and with the uncertainty on the federal level, I actually appreciate this, because the people that are working on it, the All Collaborative, PCRI, they're going to have to be more creative, because when they started this process, we were under a very different administration. So I commend them for giving us options instead of just giving up, because it is a difficult market to develop in. I want to acknowledge that as well to the community. It's not an easy market to develop in. And so I respect all of the people working on this, and so I think it's great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, we are now at 7:43 and what would have been 7:33, so roughly another 27 minutes if we can exercise, and I think we'll actually be able to do it within the 17 minutes. We have 2 people that signed up for public testimony. And so, Suzanne, I ask you to come, and you don't have to worry about pushing any buttons or anything. Welcome. You've got 3 minutes.
Your mark is set, go. Hi, I'm Suzanne Vodricas-House, and I want to talk about ask about the people, and we're talking about development, and we're talking about the money and sort of, having $100,000 or having $80,000. But the fact is, if you've got somebody that is at 485 credit score today, the chances of getting them to 620, even if their whole heart is in it, in 18 months is tough. And I sort of implied that they might have 40% of their people that aren't going to get there. PCRI mentioned there are 3 of their clients that may or may not get there by 18 months. What happens to those families? What happens to those people? Do those money just get thrown in the air and not used? And I appreciate that it's sort of implied that maybe we might be able to have an extension for some of these families. And I'm just very concerned because they're real people that have real dreams. And if they can't make it by December of 2018, it's like, oh, sorry. And so that's my concern.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Did anyone from the committee want to respond? I would say we're concerned also.
I would like to know that too.
We are very concerned. One of the reasons why we're pushing so diligently to get product in the ground, units built, is to demonstrate and to address that very issue. The deadline is not our deadline. So we're working within the confines and the constraints of the allocation of funding. It's how the funding is allocated. So very concerned of how what we can do to help families be successful. Now, let me say this, I think I'm speaking for the committee when I say this, when I make this statement, that everyone who is sitting here on this committee is extremely committed to the benefits of this community. We're all concerned and compassionately concerned about what has happened in this community. And I'll speak more specifically for me. I'm native. I used to live on Williamson-Wygant. So I have personal investment to help families who've been impacted significantly be successful. I know what it is, having been a person whose house, the house we lived in, was condemned while we were living in it. So that gives you an idea of my own personal experience. So I'm invested for the success of the whole. So what we can do, I can't answer that because I don't have a legitimized answer, something that is authenticated, but we're concerned about the same. So thanks for raising it.
Suzanne, I would encourage you, for those people that are at 485 and eventually get to 620, is we know that when we move people to initiate power within themselves and advocate on their behalf, I am pretty confident that even if this isn't around, that there'll be other programs, because I've been doing this now, I can't believe I've been doing this for 20 years, but we always will have programs. But for you and for your organization, the most difficult part and the challenge for all of you guys working on this is to keep the buyer or the home buyer in the game. And I would just encourage you to not have them focus on this particular program, but particularly on the goal of home ownership. And for once they get there, to hold the city and us accountable to help them. And there will always be programs. I just don't want those people to go away and say, I've done all this hard work and it's not there. And I watch it day in and day out. So that's what I would really encourage you, and to come back. And people like Andrea, and her team, they'll know the programs and the products, and it will be around for those people as well, whether it's this particular program or others.
Linda, Tellis Kennedy. Absolutely. Absolutely. Welcome.
Thank you.
You've got 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm Linda Tellis Kennedy. I'm really here to represent the community and not just my job at PCRI. As a native of Portland, growing up at 1129 Northeast Alberta, I haven't lived anywhere in Portland except for in North and Northeast Portland all my life. So I don't know any other area, so I'm passionate about my job, and I'm passionate about seeing these funds be used to help people to the highest degree. I'm just going to read my card off because I'm not that good at just talking out. It is important that the implementation of the new preference policy process do not create a step that is a discouragement or a barrier to the clients who are currently in the pipeline of PCRI and our homeownership partners who have been diligently working on their mortgage readiness for the past 1 to 3 years. If the preference policy is intended to serve those who were displaced from North and Northeast Portland, that happens to represent most of, if not all of the clients that are in our pipeline and the hundreds, if not thousands of folks that come to Oz home buyer fair every single year. And I have been one that came to those fairs because I was interested in buying a home before I purchased a home. And now that I'm in the industry, I see a lot of names on letterheads of folks that has actually helped me that worked at the various agencies like Portland Housing Center, Portland Housing Bureau, and just the different places. And so I was looking through some old records from 1999 and 2000, and I saw a lot of the names. And I want to share that with them when I see them. They're not here tonight, but I saw a lot of the names that are still involved in helping folks to become homeowners. But in this whole preference policy part of it, I just want to make sure that people don't feel like there's another hurdle or something to jump through that is not going to have a good end. So I think folks like PCRI and who have been working in this community so long would be very instrumental in being able to help Portland Housing Bureau know how to deal with those type of clients to make them comfortable going through whatever that next process may be. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any response? Comment?
Linda, I just saw you in my Facebook feed. You had just helped a homeowner, and I just want to say congratulations that you've come full circle, and now you're also creating the change. I saw you with your homeowner and the realtor, and congratulations to you as well.
I'll just I want to make a comment to the Oversight Committee, because I think this
And
issue,
you are?
Matthew Schauble with the Portland Housing Bureau. This issue's come up a few times about families or households that are currently in the pipelines of one of the partner organizations. And just from moving forward, there are really 3 options. The Oversight Committee could recommend direct allocation, not using the preference policy, but specific to the households in the pipelines of the existing partners. The second would be to to recommend a commitment of resources to the households in the pipeline and run a preference policy within the pipeline itself. And the third would be to continue to do what we're doing, which is to say everyone has to go through the standard preference application process. So I'm not recommending one over another. I just want folks to know that those are the 3 options that you could pursue to that specific concern.
Excellent. Necessary information. Thank you, Matthew. So thanks everyone for your time tonight. I appreciate your being present. As you see, there are, I would consider this a very significantly large onion. There are layers and layers and layers involved, from affordable housing for purchasing to rental and all of the other nuances that go along with it. Hasn't been a simple process, but it's a necessary one. It's one we're also committed to seeing to the end, and our hope and our goal is that we can help as many people as possible get into home ownership. So thanks for your time tonight. We meet again on the 2nd Thursday in September. Same place, same time. Would love to have your presence as we continue our process. Have a good evening. Enjoy the rest of the sun. Thanks for being here.